So, some interesting news when it comes to Impact Wrestling and their working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, we know that Impact and New Japan do have a working relationship. We've seen talent from New Japan appear on Impact. We've seen Impact Wrestling talent appear for New Japan at several events too. In fact, the Impact World Tag Team Champions at the moment, FinJuice, they are New Japan Pro Wrestling contracted talent. El Phantasmo, a New Japan Pro Wrestling contracted talent, challenged for the Impact Wrestling X Division Championship this past weekend. Impact Under Siege on Impact Plus. So there is this working relationship going with Impact and New Japan, and it looks like more names when it comes to New Japan Pro Wrestling are going to be appearing in Impact Wrestling in the near future. This has been confirmed by Tommy Dreamer. Now, Tommy Dreamer is a producer and creative writer for Impact Wrestling, works primarily behind the scenes. Of course, he has appeared on screen as well as a talent, but he is a very influential figure in Impact. And in fact, some of you, in fact, when we've spoken about Don Callis over the course of the last few days, talking about Don Callis, his duties with Impact Wrestling reducing, the possibility that he won't be an executive vice president with Impact Wrestling going forward, possibly signing with AEW, becoming a full-time on-screen talent with them. Lots of people online and in the comments section here at the Wrestling News 365 community have said that they expect Don Callis to possibly be replaced by Tommy Dreamer. Maybe Tommy Dreamer, in addition to being a producer and creative writer, might rise up the ranks and take over Don Callis' co-executive vice president role alongside Scott D'Amore. We don't know if that's the case. That's just speculation from the guys here in the comments section, but certainly is interesting. My point being, when it comes to big issues like the Impact Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling working relationship and talent that's coming in, especially someone that's doing the creative for the show, Tommy Dreamer would know if such talents from New Japan Pro Wrestling are going forward. Now, as I mentioned, Tommy Dreamer has confirmed that more talent from New Japan Pro Wrestling will be headed to Impact Wrestling in the near future, although he did refrain from saying who or when they will arrive in Impact. Now, Dreamer, as I mentioned, is a creative writer and a producer for Impact Wrestling, and he stated this regarding New Japan Pro Wrestling on the Busted Open radio show with Ryan McKinnell. Now, this was ahead of Impact's Under Siege special on Impact Plus this past Saturday. Fight TV further confirmed the news on their Twitter for those who weren't listening to the show. So this is a story that's been out there for a couple of days now, and I find it interesting that Tommy Dreamer was saying this prior to Impact Under Siege, knowing that, of course, I think they've been finished now and wrapped up, but Impact have just done another set of Mammoth television tapings for, I think it was 4 days, taping June's worth of Impact Wrestling television on Access TV, in addition to taping Impact Against All Odds. Of course, at that event, Moose challenges Kenny Omega for the Unified Impact World Championship. So they've been taping a big amount of content there, and I find it interesting that prior to those television tapings, Tommy Dreamer did reference that possibly, just possibly, more New Japan Pro Wrestling talent could be headed to Impact Wrestling in the future. Now, that's very interesting. Now, Impact Wrestling and New Japan, they've had a working relationship for a while, right? A working relationship between Impact and New Japan has been publicly known since roughly the middle of February, where it was announced that FinJuice, the pairing of David Finlay and Juice Robinson, would be arriving in Impact Wrestling. They've since become the Impact World Tag Team Champions, and also the Bullet Club's El Phantasmo has also debuted on the show. He competed this past weekend, as I mentioned, for the X Division Championship against Josh Alexander. But the working relationship with Impact and New Japan actually goes back several years. It's been an on-off kind of thing. I don't think it's ever been as necessarily official as it is right now. Possibly back in the days of Impact on Spike TV, there was a working relationship with Impact, well, TNA Wrestling at the time, and New Japan. That's why you've had stars like Okada and Naito appearing for Impact Wrestling, and it's kind of surreal, isn't it, to see them appearing inside of an Impact Wrestling ring, the six-sided hexagonal ring back in the day, knowing that the stars that they are now and the stars that they went on to become. It's fascinating to see them in Impact, but for a while there was significant heat with Impact Wrestling and New Japan. Primarily, this stemmed from Vince Russo. New Japan felt that Vince Russo often typecast some of the Japanese or Asian wrestlers that came over to Impact Wrestling, gave them stereotypical gimmicks, bad gimmicks, didn't feature them in the right way, and all that kind of stuff. The heat got so significant at one point that no longer did they work together. But several years ago, once Anthem purchased Impact Wrestling, and when Scott D'Amore and Don Callis became executive vice presidents of the company, Impact Wrestling as a company publicly apologized to New Japan Pro Wrestling, to people like Okada, Naito, and all of those names, said, look, we're sorry, that was a different regime, that was a different time, we're a different company now, we'd love to work again in the future, and obviously things have obviously been worked out. So, and because the interesting thing at that time, if you go back to some of those early Wrestle Kingdom shows and those Tokyo Dome shows, that's when you had the likes of Kurt Angle as the TNA World Heavyweight Champion appear at that event, became the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. You also had Jeff Hardy as the TNA World Heavyweight Champion appear at a Wrestle Kingdom show. Yes, Jeff Hardy, when he was with TNA Wrestling, appeared for New Japan, and a kind of often forgotten appearance for New Japan Pro Wrestling. So that relationship has been there. It's soured for a while, but now it's really stronger than ever, and it's proven to do good business for Impact Wrestling in terms of exposure. There are quite a few names. I just mentioned a few previously. Okada, Naito, Sonata were also teased. All three of those guys were teased in the trailer for this year's Slammiversary pay-per-view alongside pro wrestling known as the Great Muta. They've all been in Impact Wrestling before. Sonata's even a former X Division champion. So it does raise the possibility that possibly we could see names like Okada, Naito, Sonata, even the Great Muta appear at Slammiversary going forward. I often refer back to this report when it comes to Okada. There was a report, gosh, when would this have been? 2 or 3 months ago at this point, maybe 3 months ago, where it said that Okada was coming over to the United States and he was going to work a match, an angle, as part of the AEW and Impact Wrestling working relationship. Now, at the time, many assumed that would have been AEW, because Okada's a big star in Japan. Globally, he's a very big star, one of the best wrestlers in the world, and a name of his stature and a star of his stature coming over to the United States. You would think he would go to the bigger company that has the most exposure, that's beneficial for New Japan Pro Wrestling. You would think he goes to AEW and possibly faces Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship, or maybe faces Chris Jericho, because Jericho's got the New Japan Pro Wrestling connection, or maybe even Jon Moxley. He is the IWGP United States Heavyweight Champion, something like that. And that might be the avenue that they go down. Well, obviously, AEW does have a working relationship with New Japan, and it is stronger than it has been previously. There's no doubt about that. There was a bit of heat there when it came to AEW and New Japan for a while. That stemmed from the Bucks, Cody, and especially Kenny Omega leaving, setting up AEW or going over to AEW. There was residual heat there. There was even stories, wasn't there, about Kenny Omega flying to Japan to work an event with Rio for another Japanese promotion. I can't remember which one it was. But there was issues of Kenny Omega even getting into the country, which some people linked to New Japan. Now, I don't know if New Japan really have that kind of influence over there in Japan, but who knows? So there was heat there for a while. It doesn't look like that's necessarily the case now. You don't have or allow Jon Moxley to defend the IWGP Heavyweight United States Heavyweight Championship on the show like they did this past week. So I think the heat has subsided there. But for me, the stronger working relationship is between Impact and New Japan because it's been going on longer. So who's to say that we don't get Kenny Omega versus Okada inside of an Impact Wrestling ring for maybe both championships or maybe for just the Impact World Championship? Anything's possible. If we've learned from any of this when it comes to AEW, Impact, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all this stuff, if we've learned anything over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, it's that anything really is possible. And the days of saying, well, he won't appear for this company because they're too small or they're too big or there's friction there, I think we've learnt that pro wrestling is a business. And if there is money to be made, people seem more willing than ever to put politics aside. And possibly that could lead to Okada coming in. Now, is Okada who Tommy Dreamer is referring to? I don't know. If it was Okada, that'd be great. If it was Naito, that would be great. Even if it's just Sonata, the X Division's very strong at the moment with Impact, and Sonata versus Josh Alexander, sign me up. I love that match he had with El Fantasma this past weekend at Under Siege. So it's a really interesting time and a really interesting proposition when it comes to a working relationship between Impact and New Japan. Now, speaking of working relationships, Deonna Purrazzo, AAA and Impact Wrestling, it's been confirmed that Deonna Purrazzo will be facing, will have a title versus title match, champion versus champion match at TripleMania this year. She will be facing Fabi Apache. Now, Deonna Purrazzo actually confronted Apache at the AAA Rey de Reyes show, and at the time she was on commentary for the match. Of course, Deonna Purrazzo, the Knockouts champion, she came out, challenged Apache for a title versus title match at TripleMania, and it now has been officially confirmed by AAA this afternoon, or this evening. They confirmed that it's championship versus championship, Fabi Apache versus Deonna Purrazzo at TripleMania, what's that, 29? So that's on August 14, 2021. Now, of course, that show will also feature Kenny Omega versus Andrade for the AAA Mega Championship. So there's still a bit of an Impact connection there. But great for Deonna Purrazzo. If you've seen any videos that I've done about Impact Wrestling here on the channel when I've spoken about the Knockouts division, which I'm a huge fan of the Knockouts division, obviously, because I think it's so well booked. I think it's a pillar of Impact. I mean, look at this past weekend. Impact Under Siege featured 3 Knockouts matches: a Knockouts Championship match, a Knockouts Tag Team Championship match, and a Knockouts Tag Team match. That's the commitment to women's wrestling that Impact Wrestling has. It's a pillar of their presentation. It's a pillar of their product. It's a cornerstone of Impact Wrestling. And Deonna Purrazzo leads the charge of that. She is one of, right now, and I know sometimes I say this and people go, I don't know about that. I say one of. I'm not saying she's the best, but I'm saying she is up there right now with one of the best female wrestlers in the world. She, for the last however many months, has just been nailing it every single time. Now, I don't think her match this past weekend against Havoc at Under Siege was anything particularly special, but it's sometimes you need that in a championship range. Sometimes you need those matches. They aren't that special, but I said this about Kenny Omega. Sometimes the greatest championship reigns of all time, they're not just filled with great matches, but they're filled with different opponents, different stories. And at the end of it, you can say, so-and-so, they defended the title against this person, against this person, against this person. They had this match, this story. That's what Deonna Purrazzo is doing right now, and I don't see any reason for her to lose the Knockouts Championship anytime soon. So hopefully, we're getting more of a bit of a belt collector storyline, and hopefully, when they say championship versus championship, I'm guessing both titles are on the line. I'm hoping that it's not just a champion versus champion match. I think it's championship versus championship. I'm hoping Deonna Purrazzo walks away with another championship, and it just elevates Purrazzo to another level, which she absolutely deserves. So I'm excited for this. I don't know if I necessarily will watch TripleMania. I must confess, I don't know a ton about AAA. I haven't watched a ton of it. I see the highlights every year from TripleMania and that kind of stuff. Will I watch it? I mean, if that's something that you guys want to see on the channel, if you'd want to see a watch along for that, again, I don't know what that would necessarily look like. I'd be interested in doing it to sample the product. Like I said, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to AAA, but if that's something that you guys are interested, you can let me know in the comment section below, and that could be quite interesting, couldn't it? Now let's move on. Let's talk about ACEY Romero, because Impact star ACEY Romero has revealed that he tested positive for COVID earlier this month. During a recent appearance on Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore podcast, Impact Wrestling star ACEY Romero announced that he tested positive for COVID-19 at the beginning of this month. He noted that he had some pretty bad symptoms for a few days. This is what he had to say, quotes, "I tested positive about 11 days ago. I feel I'm pretty lucky because I only had 3 bad days and 1 really bad day where I felt the Grim Reaper was coming for me. The extent of things I've been going through is fevers. I haven't had a fever in like 5 years. It was like 102, 103 fever. Body aches, trouble breathing. My breathing is not the worst, but it's not the best. I have a personal trainer and my cardio was really good, but now I walk up a flight of steps and I get blown. I'm nervous to get back in the gym. Someone told me I'm going through the worst of it. I just have to get through it. I'm in good spirits every day since Wednesday. I'm getting better. I can't taste or smell right now. Hopefully that will come back and my breathing regulates to a more normal level to where it was. Other than that, I consider myself very lucky because I know it could have gotten way worse." And it's an important message really from ACEY Romero there, isn't it? First of all, really glad that he's feeling better and he's on the other side of things. It might give an indication as to what his status is going to be when it comes to Impact Wrestling on television for the next few weeks. As I mentioned earlier on, we had over the past 4 or 5 days, we had the Impact Wrestling television tapings for June. That included 4 or 5 weeks worth of television. It also included the Impact Wrestling Against All Odds event as well. So given that he tested positive 11 days ago and he's still experiencing symptoms, or he still is coming, even if he's coming out of it, it might be a case of he decided to sit out this taping. If that is the case, maybe we don't expect any of ACEY Romero on upcoming episodes of Impact Wrestling on Access TV or the Impact Against All Odds pay-per-view. We'll have to wait and see. I would rather err on the side of caution if I was Impact and I was ACEY Romero. He's saying that he hasn't even got back into the gym yet and he's still getting blown up going up a flight of steps, so he really shouldn't be wrestling in the ring if he's in that condition, should he? But the most important thing there is that he's feeling better and he feels on the mend, and it's an important message, isn't it, that whilst we are heading, whatever phrase or whatever you want to call it, whether it's round in the corner, turn in the corner, light at the end of the tunnel, going back to normality, whatever you want to call it, it's an important thing to recognize that it's not over at the moment. And obviously there is positivity at the moment with restrictions being lifted and vaccination and people being able to go see their friends, their families and loved ones, and especially over the last few days, it's been so heartwarming. I just finished watching a football game, Man United, on television, where there are fans inside the ground again and all this kind of stuff. It's just great to see, but it's an important message just to still stay vigilant, still practice social distancing, and make sure to get vaccinated and get the vaccine. So it's great to hear that ACEY Romero is on the mend, and we wish him all the best, and hopefully we can see him back on Impact Wrestling television soon. Now, finally, I did want to talk about this before we wrap it up, and that is the announced tag team title match confirmed for Impact Wrestling on Thursday night this week. Now, following the number one contenders match victory at Saturday's Impact Under Siege pay-per-view, it has been announced that Ace Austin and Madman Fulton will get their shot at the Impact World Tag Team Championships this coming Thursday against David Finlay and Juice Robinson, FinJuice, on Impact Wrestling. This is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because there is a real possibility, I think, that Austin and Fulton win. And I think it comes down to how long do FinJuice stay around for. It's a bit like the Kenny Omega situation, and I think it's quite good that we've started off the video talking about Impact and New Japan and that working relationship and how successful that's proven to be and how beneficial that's proven to be for both companies. But obviously, FinJuice have an expiration date in Impact. They're New Japan Pro Wrestling contracted talents. They're not contracted to Impact Wrestling. So they're only going to be doing a certain amount of appearances this year before they start doing more stuff with New Japan, especially, as I mentioned, about restrictions being lifted. Now, I know in Japan at the moment it's particularly bad, isn't it? But whilst they are appearing for Impact regularly at the moment, they've got an expiration date. And it's just a point of whenever they drop the titles, they're probably going to disappear at that point. So there is a real possibility for me that Ace Austin and Madman Fulton possibly win the titles this coming week on Impact Wrestling. And that's the reason I picked them. Heading into Impact Under Siege, they were a prediction that I got right in the Tag Team Championship number one contender match, because I looked along that list and there were two heel tag teams in that match. One was Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. The other one was Rohit Raju and Shira. And I looked at that and I said, well, it's going to be a heel team because FinJuice are baby faces. So out of those two heel teams, who can I realistically see as beating FinJuice, keeping FinJuice credible because New Japan want to protect their talent, and also who can I see realistically being Impact World Tag Team Champions? Who's good enough to be Impact World Tag Team Champions tomorrow? And that's Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. So that's why I picked them, and I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if we saw new Impact World Tag Team Champions this coming Thursday night. But one could argue, why would they do that on a random episode of Impact Wrestling? Would they save that for maybe Against All Odds at the end of the month? Possibly. Or are FinJuice going to hold the championships until Slammiversary? The tag team picture right now in Impact is slightly confusing, I think, in the sense that the Good Brothers realistically now should be nowhere near the Impact World Tag Team Championships. I mean, they shouldn't, should they? They lost to FinJuice, was it Sacrifice, for the Impact World Tag Team Championships. They lost the rematch to FinJuice once again at Impact Rebellion, and then this past weekend at Impact Under Siege. I know that Carl Anderson got pinned by Eddie Edwards, but it was still Eddie Edwards was teaming with FinJuice. The Good Brothers lost again. The Good Brothers are turning into some of the highest paid jobbers in Impact Wrestling right now. So that's 3 matches they've been involved in with FinJuice where they have lost. They lost the championships to them, they lost the rematch, and now they lost at Impact Under Siege in the 6-man tag. So realistically, they should be nowhere near. They should be nowhere near the Impact World Tag Team Championships at the moment. Now, again, that raises the question of, okay, if they're not going to, do we need to get new champions and then the Good Brothers can challenge them? Now, we had an Ace Austin and Madman Fulton feud with the Good Brothers last year, but that's when the Good Brothers were baby faces. Now they're both heels. How does a heel versus heel tag team feud work out? I don't know. Maybe the way around it is to have Ace Austin and Madman Fulton win the Impact Tag Team Championships, because then you can say, FinJuice can be like, well, we want a rematch. But then the Good Brothers can say, well, wait a minute. We had a feud with Ace Austin and Madman Fulton last year, and we beat you a couple of times. So we own victories over the Impact World Tag Team Champions. Therefore, we should get an opportunity at the Impact World Tag Team Championships again. So maybe this is just a really long way round to getting the titles back on the Good Brothers. But in terms of momentum and steam, they really don't have a lot on Impact Wrestling Television at the moment. That's why I was really confused about the outcome of that 6-man tag team match on Saturday. It was the only match I predicted wrong going into it, and that's because that finish just doesn't make sense to me unless they're building towards Omega versus Eddie Edwards at Slammiversary, which might be the case, but Moose is the #1 contender for the Impact World Championship right now. So it's a really confusing time, but we could see, possibly, just possibly, new Impact World Tag Team Champions this coming week on Impact. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these news stories today, talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling talent possibly coming over to Impact Wrestling in the future? Deonna Purrazzo's match being confirmed for TripleMania in August. ACEY Romero revealing his COVID diagnosis, and the tag team title match scheduled for Thursday night on ACEY TV. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.